These are verses that people genuinely think are refuting the claims of Calvinists like myself who say that God plans, purposes, determines, and even by his sustaining causative power brings about all things, including sin and evil. But I want you to notice as we go through these passages that none of them are addressing God's ultimate relationship to his creation. They are all addressing God's relationship to sin and evil within creation. No one should come away thinking that what Calvinism is teaching is that God is somehow manifest in creation alongside those evil things, commanding people to do evil or forcing people to do evil. When you simply understand my consistent point that God is the sustainer of all things, these passages we're about to go through pose no problem for the Calvinists whatsoever. The first verse is 1 Corinthians 14:33, which says, "For God is not a God of confusion, but of peace, as in all the churches of the saints." Most of you may have heard this verse commonly quoted in the King James Version, which says that God is not the author of confusion. And people want to say, look here, you say God is the author of all things, but this verse says God is not the author of confusion, therefore look how easy it was to disprove you. But not so fast. The problem is that the word author isn't actually in the verse anywhere. If you look at any other mainline translation, you'll simply read that God is not of confusion or of disorder, but of peace. The next point is the context. The context is speaking of order within the church. As the verse says, God is not of confusion, but of peace, as in all the churches of the saints. The point is, how do you tell a true church from a false one? Obviously, if you enter a church and there's all sorts of confusion and arguing and disorder, it probably isn't a church of God. That's all this verse is teaching. It's not speaking of God's ultimate metaphysical relationship to the occurrence of confusion or disorder within creation. And I simply repeat some of the verses I cited earlier. 2 Thessalonians 2:11, "Therefore God sends them a strong delusion, so that they may believe what is false." Think there's a little bit of confusion involved there? I would say so. 1 Kings 22:23, "Now therefore, behold, the Lord put a lying spirit in the mouth of all your prophets. The Lord has declared disaster for you." Once again, there's a little bit of confusion involved in a lying spirit as well. So no one is saying that God does these things by being manifest in creation, whispering lies or confusion into people's ears. Obviously, God uses storyline level means to bring these things about. The point is that the biblical authors did not hesitate to ascribe these types of things to the ultimate control of God. This is enough to demonstrate the misuse of 1 Corinthians 14:33 against God being the author of sin. Is there a contradiction, or is someone making false assumptions along the way?